So, why do we suffer as individuals in life? So, when you look at this, on one side there's suffering, and on the other side there's joy, or the opposite of suffering, blissfulness, or whatever you want to call it, doesn't make a difference. These two sides that you see are the same thing, but from different perspectives of experience. One you don't like, the other you do like. So the whole pursuit of the spiritual path that actually one goes on is to fall on one side of the spectrum, which is the positive side. They don't want to experience the negative side of the whole entire journey. But if you look at the yin and yang symbols, right, it's a 50-50. So it's not something that one can say this is good, this is bad. I'll give you an example. Let's just say, for instance, if you had a flight at 2 p.m. and you get to the airport, and for some strange reason, the flight has already taken off. It's already gone into the sky. And you had to be on that flight because you had the most important event that you was going to actually reach there to get maybe something that you really, really wanted. And it didn't happen. And at that moment, your whole entire world inside is just shifting and crumbling, and there's a whole lot of turmoil and pulling your hair out. Then 15 minutes later, you hear that plane crashed. And then you're like, oh my God, thank God that happened. So we go through life like this, not knowing what is the purpose of suffering. What is the purpose of having obstacles and having challenges? Is because through this hardship, through what you're calling as a challenge, all of these events are there. You can use it to shape yourself in a positive direction, or you can use it to, sit and fall apart. You have these two choices. Every single human being has these two choices. They can choose to either use it for growth, or they can use it for their detriment. That is 100% your choice. And the thing about this is, you have this choice with you every single moment of your life. Literally every single moment of your life. You have this privilege to choose how you want to experience things. Some people might think, okay, if some bad event is happening, like maybe somebody dies in their family, they feel a sense of loss, and they feel a sense of hurt, or whatever it is, or they feel that empty void. In that situation, what does somebody actually do to use that for their spiritual growth? One very harsh way of actually looking at it is that our time here on this planet is so limited. That event should actually make you think that, what am I doing with my life? What is it that I'm putting my time into? What is it that whatever I do, or whatever I have done up till that point, I can look back at the last moments and say, wow, what a life. Or look back and say, wow, I actually did all of this. So it's all about your perception. It's all about how you actually see things and how you actually view things. Because you can, if you sharpen your perception, which is a very, very powerful tool, you can literally go through anything in life. Literally go through anything in life and you will always feel like you're on the plus side of it. And that is why spiritual scriptures and stuff have always been used for thousands and thousands of years. Spirituality has always been something which people go to. And, suffering must be looked at as you can't have the good, or you can't experience the other side without going through it. You see, there's a new word being thrown around, I think, in the last couple of decades called an ego death. Well, it always existed, but it's very popular on YouTube or on whatever spiritual teacher you listen to. It's quite popular. And the thing with the ego death is that we over time build a sense of identity construct. And with this identity construct, we tend to hold and cling onto it. It doesn't exist. We have created it. We have made this identity. We have taken it on. Whether it was conscious or unconscious, we have absorbed this and it now has become us. So when there's times of change, there's times of shift that comes in one's life, to release this, because it's not serving the life which you are. It's not serving the life force within yourself. So life has its way of creating these events, and you can choose whether you want to actually go through the full thing, or do you want to choose to go through it in increments. There's sometimes, if a person is going through a lot of suffering, so there is this thing called archangels. So when I went through my spiritual ascension, a forced spiritual ascension, the reason why I say it's a forced spiritual ascension, because it wasn't really something that was in my control. It was just like everything just being bombarded in my reality, and you just forced. You don't have a choice. Like some people have a choice. I like to say, like some people, they can choose whether they want to go through something, or they can take another turn and get out of the way and avoid that there. But it will come back. But they have that choice at that moment to choose how. So when I'm saying this, I was not able to choose, is because, and this contradicts with what I was saying in the beginning, but this, what I'm talking about, this forced spiritual awakening, it's not something that you can try to escape. It's something that is happening to the one who's experiencing this kind of you can call it the observing. When I'm saying this as the observing, I'm saying the witnesser, the one that is actually seeing all of this actually unfold and push to a certain point. I'm trying to describe it so you guys can sort of imagine yourself there, but it's not possible, but I'm going to try. So you are in this space where not only is there inner conflict that is happening, like sort of the mental conflict, there's also stuff that's happening within the system on the energetic level. And then in the yogic system, they speak of the 5 sheets of consciousness. So this forced type of spiritual awakening is not happening on one sheet. It's not happening on the physical. It's not only happening on the mental. It's not only happening on the energetical levels. It's happening on all 5. So that is not something that I can describe or explain to one who has not even experienced anything of that. So it's very difficult to explain, to use words to construct, to explain what that actually means. So when I speak of a forced spiritual awakening, I am speaking of that on its max level. Because prior to that, way prior to that, in my early stages of my life, I did go through a lot of suffering. I did go through a lot of struggle, but there was nothing like this for spiritual awakening. So those types of suffering that I went through in my earlier phases, you could sleep it off. You could sleep it off, or you could do something else. This is not something which I'm talking about, the forced spiritual awakening. I'm not talking about it's something that you can sleep off, or you can just do whatever you want to do. Just forget about it. Doesn't work. And this doesn't happen for a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks or a month or 2 months. It happens for like maybe over 6 months, 7 months, 8 months. For me, I think it was like close to a year. So only after like towards the ending of the year, then I felt some sort of distance, some form of relief. So the forced spiritual awakening is not something that you can, as I said, escape. You have to allow it to happen, and this is how one of the ways how to actually be free from suffering is not to resist the suffering. And it's very strange because you see that itself is contradictory, because when one is experiencing something what they call as negative, they tend to resist it. If you have something that's coming up within your system to be released, whether it may be a toxic pattern or whatever you want to name it, when that is actually coming to be released, if you feel into it and allow it to come up and allow it to pass and allow it to come to the surface and then let go and let it be. Now that's one way. The other thing is to just not do anything but just accept the suffering as it is. Because the moment you do that without doing anything, you're not doing anything, you're just feeling it and just saying, okay, this is it. You push to a corner where there's no way out. You have to go through the door. That is when I had relief from the suffering. And it was very strange because, as I said, you see, when there is suffering, there's the one that wants to do. That is the mind, that is the ego. It thinks, okay, it needs to do this. It needs to do this type of healing. Or it maybe needs to do this type of chakra cleansing. Or maybe it needs to do this type of yoga or that type of meditation. And it's not a doing. You see that this is more being pushed towards something called the direct path. The direct path is there's no doing. There's no distance. You just are. You just is. It's a sense of, I've heard this word, isness. I don't think it's a word, but isness. And the more you resist things in your life, the more you actually, in that state, the more you get sucked into the ego, you get more sucked into the ignorance, because you don't know what's on the other side of the suffering. There's a lot of people that go through suffering and they take their life, but they don't know if that suffering that's there. And because that suffering becomes so much, it actually blinds the individual. And because they become so blinded by the suffering, so blinded by the restriction, so blinded by the chains on the individual, that they cannot see, and it becomes impossible for them to see on the other side. And this has happened for so many people. They get pushed to a certain point, and if you can stick in there and fight and still fight your way through, eventually you get to a point where there is no more fighting. There's just an absolute acceptance for what is there, because you've tried everything and you've sort of given up to a certain extent. In that very moment of despair, that is when you experience the other side of the suffering. That's the happy side. And in order to experience that happy side, sometimes you have to actually go through the challenges and go through the suffering. So, if people out there are going through anything, know that there is a positive side. There is a side where things are okay. You know, I've had some people who I've helped who were going through immense amount of suffering and immense amount of turmoil in their life. And just by me communicating with them and showing them that, changing that perspective of how they're actually seeing it, it's just a perception shift, guys. Once you have that, or you experience that, or you experience it quite a few times, or you get pushed to the edge, and then you find out, oh, it's good on the other side, and the same thing repeats again and again and again and again and again. Eventually, you start to get a sense of trust that, oh, okay, if something bad's gonna happen, there's a positive side on the other side. And when you actually go through that, then you really, really start to see, and then suffering doesn't become something that you want to avoid anymore. If it comes, you allow it and you experience it as suffering. Okay, this is suffering. This is an experience that I'm having. It's not me. And you let it pass. And then you experience the good stuff. And in order to experience the good stuff and the great stuff, which is meant to come into your life, you have to experience the sense of suffering and the sense of pain and things like that. Now, obviously, people are talking about abuse and all that stuff. That's a different story. That's not what I'm talking about here. What I'm talking about here is something different, a different kind of suffering. So obviously, there is the logical steps that one has to take in life if they're experiencing a lot of negativity and things like that. That's different. And there's other things in life that you can't control, like the environment that's happening around you, the people around you, and there's a lot of other factors, but you get the point.